James Clark, a successful businessman, toasts his daughter's happiness at a family dinner, unaware that his world is about to fall apart. A cheating wife, children who turn their backs on him, and a secret that reveals a painful truth. Can he find justice without losing himself? This story of betrayal, revenge, and an unexpected path to a new life will grab you from the first minutes. The dining room of the Clark family's sprawling estate in Chicago's North Shore glowed with the warmth of candlelight. Crystal glasses sparkled on the mahogany table, reflecting the chandelier's soft radiance. James Clark, a 52-year-old real estate magnate with a commanding presence and a salt and pepper beard, stood at the head of the table, his wine glass raised high. His deep green eyes, usually sharp with the focus of a man who'd built an empire from nothing, softened as he looked at his daughter, Emily. "To my girl," James said, his voice steady but thick with pride. "Emily, you've always had a way of surpassing every expectation I've ever had. To your engagement, and to a future brighter than I could have dreamed for you." His smile was wide, genuine, the kind that crinkled the corners of his eyes. Emily, 25, radiant in a cream silk blouse, her chestnut hair cascading over her shoulders, dipped her head in acknowledgement. The diamond on her engagement ring caught the light, sending tiny prisms dancing across the white tablecloth. "Thank you, Dad," she said, her voice warm but fleeting as her gaze shifted to her mother, Laura. Laura Clark, 50, elegant in a tailored navy dress, adjusted the pearl necklace at her throat with manicured fingers. Her poised smile didn't quite reach her blue eyes. "Of course, darling," she said, her tone smooth as velvet. "It's all for you." She lifted her glass, but her movements seemed rehearsed, as if she were playing a part in a well-worn script. At the far end of the table, Nathan, the Clark's 22-year-old son, slouched in his chair, his dark hair falling over his forehead. His thumb flicked across his phone screen, barely pausing as he muttered, "Congrats, Em. Dan's a cool guy." His half-hearted acknowledgement hung in the air, unnoticed by James, who was too caught up in the moment to mind. The clink of glasses sealed the toast, and the family settled back into their seats. The table was a masterpiece of Laura's planning: roasted lamb, truffle mashed potatoes, and a salad vibrant with heirloom tomatoes. Yet, beneath the polished surface, a faint tension simmered. James felt it, though he couldn't quite place it, a subtle distance, like a crack in a mirror that hadn't yet spread. "So," James said, cutting into his lamb, his enthusiasm undimmed, "have you and Dan thought about the wedding yet? I know the owner of the Ritz downtown, great guy, owes me a favor. Their ballroom's perfect, and I could make a call tomorrow." He leaned forward, already picturing the event. Emily in white, the city's elite toasting his daughter's happiness. Emily exchanged a quick glance with her mother before answering. "Actually, Dad, Dan's parents suggested the Lake Forest estate. It's kind of a tradition for their family." Her voice was gentle, but there was a firmness to it, a line drawn. James paused, his fork hovering midair. The Lake Forest estate? Pretentious, old money nonsense, he thought, but he masked his disapproval with a nod. "Sure, it's beautiful out there. But the Ritz has that classic Chicago charm, you know? Your mom and I had our reception at a place like that. Means something special." He looked to Laura for support, expecting her to chime in with a nostalgic quip. Instead, Laura sipped her wine, her lips tight. "That was ages ago, James. Things are different now. The estate's where everyone who's anyone gets married these days." Her tone was light, but it carried an edge, a dismissal that stung more than James cared to admit. He forced a chuckle, brushing it off. "Fair enough. Just wanted to be perfect for you, Em." He turned back to Emily, hoping for a spark of excitement, but she was already looking at her plate, pushing a tomato around with her fork. Nathan, finally glancing up from his phone, snorted. "Lake Forest's fine, Dad. Chill. Dan's folks know what they're doing." He tapped out another message, oblivious to the flicker of irritation that crossed James's face. "Put that away, Nate," James said, gesturing to the phone. "Your sister's engagement is worth a little attention, don't you think?" Nathan rolled his eyes but slid the phone into his pocket. "Whatever," he mumbled, reaching for his glass. The conversation shifted to safer ground. Emily's job at a marketing firm, Dan's promotion at his law firm, but James couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Laura's smiles were too practiced, Emily's responses too guarded, Nathan's disinterest too pronounced. He tried to rekindle the warmth, offering to cover the wedding's costs, suggesting photographers he knew, even floating the idea of a string quartet he'd heard at a gala. Each time, Emily deflected with a polite, "We'll think about it," or "Dan's parents are handling that." By the time dessert, chocolate tart with a raspberry drizzle, was served. James felt like he was grasping at a moment that kept slipping away. "You don't need to worry about a thing, Dad," Emily said finally, reaching across the table to pat his hand. "Just show up and enjoy the day." James nodded, forcing a smile, but the words landed like a stone in his chest. Show up and enjoy? He was her father, not some distant uncle. He'd spent years building a life for his family, ensuring they wanted for nothing. Why did it feel like he was being sidelined? Dinner ended with Laura excusing herself to check on a charity thing, her phone already in hand as she slipped into the study. Emily lingered to help clear the table, but her chatter was surface level, all about bridesmaid dresses and floral trends. Nathan vanished upstairs, leaving James alone in the dining room, the echo of clinking glasses now a faint memory. Later that night, as James climbed the stairs to the master bedroom, he caught a glimpse of Laura through the study door. She was hunched over her phone, typing furiously, her face lit by the screen's glow. "Work?" he called out, leaning against the doorframe. Laura flinched, her thumb quickly locking the screen. "Yeah, just charity stuff," she said, her voice too bright. "You know how it is." James nodded, but as he turned away, a knot formed in his gut. Charity stuff didn't make her hands tremble like that. He pushed the thought aside, telling himself he was overthinking. Laura was his partner of nearly 3 decades, the mother of his children. Whatever was going on, it couldn't be what it looked like. In bed, he stared at the ceiling, the house silent except for the faint hum of the city outside. The pride he'd felt earlier had curdled into something else. Doubt, maybe, or the first stirrings of unease. He thought of Emily's guarded smile, Nathan's indifference, Laura's evasive glance. For the first time in years, James wondered if the family he'd worked so hard to hold together was still his at all. As sleep eluded him, one question looped in his mind. What weren't they telling him? The Chicago skyline shimmered under a late September sun, its glass towers reflecting a golden haze. James Clark sat in his corner office on the 47th floor of the Clark Properties headquarters, a sleek space of polished wood and modern art. At 52, he'd built a real estate empire that spanned the Midwest. But today, his mind wasn't on contracts or acquisitions. It was on the dinner 2 weeks ago, the way Emily had brushed off his wedding ideas, Laura's clipped responses, Nathan's disinterest. The memory gnawed at him, a puzzle missing too many pieces. He leaned back in his leather chair, staring at a framed photo on his desk. Him, Laura, Emily, and Nathan at a Lake Michigan beach house 5 years prior. Emily, barely 20 then, grinned with a sandy volleyball in hand. Nathan, a gangly teen, smirked at something off camera. Laura, elegant even in a sun hat, stood close but not touching James. His own smile in the photo felt foreign now, like it belonged to a man who hadn't yet sensed the distance creeping into his family. A knock on the door pulled him back. "Mr. Clark." His assistant, Rachel, poked her head in, her tablet glowing. "Your 2 p.m. with the zoning board's been pushed to 4. Also, Emily called. Said she'll stop by tonight to talk wedding stuff." James's mood lifted. "Good. Thanks, Rachel." Maybe this was his chance to reconnect, to feel like part of Emily's big moment. He'd been texting her ideas, a caterer who'd done a senator's gala, a florist with a knack for roses, but her replies were vague. "Sounds nice, Dad. I'll check with Dan." Tonight, he'd pin her down, make sure she knew he was all in. The day dragged through meetings, but James's thoughts kept drifting. He called Laura at noon, hoping to coordinate for Emily's visit. "Hey, you free tonight?" "Em's coming over," he said when she picked up. Laura's voice was distracted, punctuated by the clink of dishes. "Tonight? I've got a charity meeting, James. You know, the literacy fundraiser." A pause, then, "But I'll try to swing by after." "Charity again?" James frowned, picturing her in the study that night after dinner, her phone screen lighting up her tense face. "You've been swamped with that lately." "It's a busy season," she said, too quickly. "Gotta go, see you later." The line went dead before he could respond. James set his phone down, a prickle of unease running through him. Laura had always been active in her social circles, galas, boards, luncheons, but this felt different. Secretive. He shook it off, blaming his restless mind. Laura was dependable, even if their marriage had settled into a comfortable routine. She wouldn't hide anything serious. By evening, James was back at the North Shore estate, the house quiet except for the hum of the fridge. He'd sent the staff home early, wanting a casual night with Emily. At 7 p.m., the doorbell chimed, and he opened it to find his daughter, her chestnut hair tied back, a nervous smile on her face. "Dad," Emily hugged him, her perfume floral and sharp. Sorry I'm late. Traffic was brutal. No worries, kiddo. James led her to the living room, where he'd set out coffee and a tray of pastries. So, wedding talk. Spill it, what's the plan? Emily sank into the couch, tucking a leg under her. It's a lot. Dan's parents are super involved, which is great, but it's intense. They've got this vision for the Lake Forest estate, string lights, vintage chandeliers, the works. James nodded, though the mention of Dan's parents, wealthy, connected, and insufferably proper, grated on him. Sounds fancy, but what do you want? I was thinking we could look at venues together. The Drake's got that rooftop terrace. Could be stunning at sunset. Emily hesitated, picking at a croissant. That's sweet, Dad, but the estate's pretty much locked in. Dan's mom already booked it. They know the coordinator, so it was easy. James's jaw tightened. Locked in? Without asking me. He kept his tone light, but the sting was real. I'm your dad, Em. I'd like to help. I know people too. Better ones, probably. She gave a small laugh, but it didn't reach her eyes. I know, but it's under control. Dan's parents are covering most of it, so. She trailed off, sipping her coffee. Covering it. James leaned forward, his voice sharper than he intended. I'm not broke, Emily. I've got this. Whatever you need, venue, dress, hell, a private jet to Paris for the honeymoon. Just say the word. Dad, it's not about money, Emily said, a touch defensive. It's just easier this way. They've got everything handled. Easier. The word hit like a jab. James sat back, studying his daughter. She wasn't meeting his gaze, her fingers twisting the ring on her finger. Easier for who? He asked quietly. For everyone, she said, too fast. Look, I don't want to stress you out. You're always so busy with work. He forced a smile, but it felt hollow. Never too busy for you. The conversation shifted, bridesmaid colors, guest lists, but every question James asked was met with a variation of Dan's parents are handling it. By the time Emily left, promising to keep him posted, he felt like he'd been talking to a stranger. Laura didn't show. Her charity meeting stretched past 10 p.m., and her text, running late, don't wait up, did nothing to ease the knot in James's chest. He poured a whiskey, pacing the living room, replaying the night. Emily's deflections, Laura's absence. The pieces didn't fit. The next morning, he was grabbing coffee downtown when he saw her, Laura, across the street at a corner cafe. She was laughing, her head tilted back, her hand brushing the arm of a man James didn't recognize. He was tall, mid-50s, with a polished look, gray blazer, no tie, the kind of guy who belonged at a yacht club. Their ease, the way Laura's eyes lit up, felt like a punch to James's gut. He didn't approach. Instead, he stood frozen, watching as they shared a pastry, their chairs angled close. When Laura leaned in, her hand lingering on the man's wrist, James turned away, his pulse hammering. He drove back to the office, the image seared into his mind. That night, he called Ted Harper, an old college buddy who'd known Laura back when they were all younger, wilder. Ted, I need a favor, James said, his voice low. Saw Laura with someone today. Older guy, slick. You know him? Ted hesitated, the silence heavy. Yeah, I might. Was he tall? Gray hair, preppy vibe. That's him, James said, gripping the phone. Another pause. Sounds like Michael Reed. Laura's ex from Northwestern. They were tight back then, engaged, almost. I heard they reconnected at some alumni thing last year. James's mouth went dry. Reconnected how? No details, Ted said carefully. Just chatter from mutual friends. Look, man, don't jump to conclusions. Could be nothing. Right? James said, though he didn't believe it. Thanks, Ted. He hung up, staring at the photo on his desk again. Laura's smile, and it looked different now. Calculated, distant. The unease he'd felt for weeks hardened into something else, suspicion. He opened his laptop, searched Michael Reed online. A LinkedIn profile popped up, corporate lawyer, based in Chicago, widowed, no kids. The face matched the man from the cafe. James closed the laptop, his mind racing. He wasn't a man to act on impulse, but he couldn't ignore this. He needed answers, not accusations, not yet, but facts. He picked up his phone again, dialing a number he hadn't used in years, a private investigator named Vince Corso, discreet and thorough. Vince, it's James Clark, he said when the call connected. I need you to look into someone. My wife's been spending time with a guy. Michael Reed. I want to know everything. Got it, Vince replied, his tone all business. I'll need a week, maybe two. You want photos, records, the works? Everything, James said. And keep it quiet. As he hung up, the house felt too big, too empty. He poured another whiskey, the burn grounding him. Laura was still out, another charity thing. Emily hadn't texted since last night. Nathan was probably at some bar, burning through his allowance. James stood at the window, the city lights blurring below. He built this life, every brick, every dollar for them. If they were pulling away, hiding something, he'd find out why. And if it was what he feared, he wouldn't just walk away. He'd make sure they felt the weight of their choices. Rain streaked the windows of James Clark's office, blurring the Chicago skyline into a gray smear. It had been 10 days since he'd hired Vince Corso, the private investigator, and the weight was fraying his nerves. At 52, James was used to control, steering deals, shaping skylines, but now he felt adrift, caught in a storm he hadn't seen coming. The suspicion that Laura was hiding something, maybe even betraying him, had rooted deep, fed by memories of her evasions and that cafe encounter with Michael Reed. He sat at his desk, the glow of his laptop casting shadows across his face. The family photo, Laura, Emily, Nathan, and him at the beach house stared back, a relic of a time he wasn't sure ever existed. His phone buzzed, and Vince's name lit up the screen. James's pulse quickened as he answered. Vince, what VE you got? His voice was steady, but his grip on the phone betrayed his tension. Plenty, Vince said, his tone clipped, professional. I'm outside your building. Better we do this in person. James glanced at the clock, for 17 p.m. come up. I'm in the office. 15 minutes later, Vince Corso sat across from him, a manila folder in hand. Vince was mid-40s, wiry, with sharp eyes that missed nothing. He slid the folder across the desk. It's all here. Photos, texts, financials. You're not gonna like it. James opened the folder, his jaw tight. The first photo hit like a fist. Laura and Michael Reed at a hotel bar in the Loop, their heads close, her hand on his arm. Another showed them leaving together, her laugh captured mid-frame. A third was worse, Laura slipping into Michael's car, her face soft in a way James hadn't seen in years. Keep going, Vince said, leaning back. It gets uglier. James flipped to the next section, screenshots of texts, pulled from who knew where. Laura to Michael, you're the only one who gets me anymore. Michael to Laura, dinner tomorrow? Somewhere quiet. A date last month coincided with Laura's charity retreat in Milwaukee, a trip James now saw was a lie. Receipts showed hotel bookings, dinners, even a weekend in Napa, all paid with a credit card James didn't recognize. His stomach churned, but he kept his face blank. How long? He asked, voice low. 6 months, minimum, Vince said. Maybe longer. Reed's a lawyer, keeps things tidy, but they got sloppy lately. That cafe you saw? They've met there twice a week for months. James nodded, his eyes scanning a bank statement. Small withdrawals from a joint account. $200 here, $500 there, funneled to a card Laura claimed was for household expenses. He trusted her, never questioned it. Now each line felt like a cut. There's more, Vince said, hesitating. It's about Emily's wedding. James's head snapped up. What about it? Vince pulled a USB drive from his pocket. Audio. Recorded last week at a bridal shop. Laura and Emily were there, talking with the planner. I had a contact nearby, don't ask how. Just listen. James plugged the drive into his laptop, his fingers steady despite the tremor in his chest. The file loaded, and Laura's voice filled the room, crisp and unmistakable. James can't be there. It'll complicate things. Michael's coming, and I don't want tension. You know how your dad gets, always trying to take over. Emily's voice, softer, uncertain. But he's my dad, Mom. He'll be hurt. He'll get over it, Laura said, dismissive. This is your day. Dan's parents agree. It's better if it's just their crowd. Tell James it was their call. He won't push back. A pause, then Emily, quieter. Okay. I'll say it's Dan's idea. The recording ended. James sat frozen, the words echoing like a slammed door. His daughter, his little girl, who'd once begged him to read her bedtime stories, had agreed to shut him out. For Laura. For Michael. For strangers who cared more about status than family. Vince cleared his throat. There's one last thing. Nathan. James's eyes narrowed. What about him? Caught him on a call with Laura 2 days ago. He knew about Reed. Not the whole affair, maybe, but enough. She told him to keep quiet, said it'd upset you for no reason. He didn't argue. James leaned back, the air heavy in his lungs. Nathan, too. His son, who'd coasted through college on James's dime, who barely looked up from his phone at dinner, had chosen silence over loyalty. The betrayal wasn't just Laura's, it was all of them. His family, the people he'd bled for, had drawn a line and left him on the outside. He closed the folder, his movements deliberate. Anything else? That's the core of it, Vince said. You want me to keep digging? Not yet. James stood, his voice calm, almost too calm. Send me the bill. I'll call if I need you. Vince nodded, sensing the shift in James's demeanor. Take care, man. This stuff, it's rough. After Vince left, James stood at the window, rain drumming against the glass. The city sprawled below, indifferent to the storm breaking inside him. He'd suspected Laura's distance, even braced for an affair. But this? His own kids conspiring to erase him from Emily's wedding, all to spare their mother's lover discomfort? It was a knife twisted deeper than he'd imagined. He poured his scotch from the decanter on his credenza, the burn grounding him. Anger simmered, but it wasn't wild or reckless. It was cold, focused, the kind that fueled plans, not outbursts. He thought of confronting Laura, of storming home, and laying out every photo, every text. But that would give her power, let her spin excuses, play the victim. No. If they wanted him gone, he'd show them what absence really meant. He called Edward Wilson, his attorney, a man who'd handled his business deals for 2 decades. Ed, it's James, he said when the call connected. I need a meeting. Tomorrow, early. It's personal. Everything okay? Edward's voice was cautious. Not remotely, James said. Bring your divorce guy. And someone who knows trusts and estates. A pause. Got it. 8 a.m. work. Perfect. James hung up, his mind already mapping the next steps. He wouldn't scream or beg. He'd dismantle the life they took for granted, legally, methodically, irreversibly. Laura wanted Michael? Fine. Emily and Nathan wanted to play along? They'd learned the cost. He built their world. He could unbuild it too. Back at home that night, the estate felt like a stage set, beautiful, hollow. Laura was out again, another fundraiser. James wandered into her study, a room she'd claimed as her own years ago. Her desk was tidy, but a drawer was slightly ajar. He hesitated, then opened it. Inside, a burner phone, cheap and black, its screen locked. His heart thudded, but he didn't touch it. Not yet. Evidence would come when he needed it, and he'd make sure it was airtight. He sat in the living room, the silence oppressive. The invitation to Emily's engagement dinner still sat on the mantel, its gold script mocking him. He'd been so proud, so ready to give her everything. Now, he saw it for what it was, the start of a performance where he was the only one not reading the script. His phone pinged, a text from Emily. Hey Dad, sorry I've been MIA. Wedding stuff's crazy. Can we talk soon? The words felt like a taunt, her voice from the recording looping in his head. Tell James it was their call. He typed a reply, deleted it, then typed again. Sure. Whenever you're ready. Let her think he was clueless. Let them all think they'd won. The truth was coming, and when it did, it wouldn't be a confrontation. It'd be a reckoning. As the rain slowed to a drizzle, James stood, the folder from Vince tucked under his arm. He wasn't the man they thought he was, not anymore. The James Clark who trusted blindly, who gave without question, was gone. In his place was someone new, calculating, resolute, and ready to rewrite the rules. The Palmer House Hilton's grand ballroom glittered under crystal chandeliers, its gilded ceilings reflecting the buzz of Chicago's elite. James Clark, impeccably dressed in a tailored navy suit, moved through the crowd with a practiced smile, shaking hands and accepting compliments. At 52, he was a titan in the city's real estate scene, but tonight wasn't about business. It was the launch of the Clark Foundation, his newly established charity to fund young entrepreneurs from underserved communities. It was also, though no one knew it yet, the stage for his carefully orchestrated reckoning. 2 months had passed since James received Vince Corso's damning evidence. Laura's affair with Michael Reed, Emily's agreement to exclude him from her wedding, Nathan's complicity in their silence. The betrayal had carved a hollow space in him, but James hadn't crumbled. Instead, he'd built a plan, cold, legal, and precise. Tonight, he'd set it in motion, not with shouting or violence, but with the kind of power only a man of his means could wield. He glanced across the ballroom, where Laura stood near a floral arrangement, her champagne flute untouched. She looked elegant in a silver gown, but her posture was stiff, her eyes darting nervously. Emily and Nathan were nearby, Emily in a blush pink dress, whispering to Dan, her fiancé, while Nathan, uncomfortable in a borrowed tux, scanned the room. They'd come uninvited, likely sensing the shift in James's demeanor, the distance he'd cultivated since that night in his office. Good. Let them squirm. James's attorney, Edward Wilson, had worked tirelessly to execute his instructions. The first step was the Clark Foundation, funded with a $50 million endowment from James's personal assets, money originally earmarked for Emily and Nathan's trust funds. The siblings now stood to inherit just $10,000 each, a symbolic slap that echoed their dismissal of him. Laura's fate was sealed in divorce papers, filed last week on grounds of adultery, with Vince's evidence ensuring she'd walk away with a modest apartment and a fraction of their shared wealth. The house, the vacation properties, the art collection, all would be sold or redirected, leaving her status in tatters. But the real strike was social. James had let whispers of Laura's affair leak, not through gossip, but through strategic omissions. A photo of her and Michael at the wedding, snapped by a guest, had surfaced online. A well-timed comment to a connected friend about personal challenges had fueled speculation. Chicago's elite loved a scandal, and Laura, once a darling of charity boards, was now a pariah, her invitations dwindling. Mr. Clark. A voice broke his thoughts. Richard Palmer, a grizzled CEO and longtime ally, clapped him on the shoulder. Hell of a night. This foundation's making waves already. Thanks, Richard, James said, his smile warm but calculated. Just trying to give back. Smart move, Richard said, lowering his voice. Especially with everything going on. He glanced toward Laura, his meaning clear. James shrugged, playing it cool. Life moves forward, Richard. Always does. As Richard drifted off, James caught Laura's eye. She started toward him, but a woman nearby, a socialite known for her sharp tongue, whispered loudly to her companion, "Can you believe she showed up? After what she did?" Laura froze, her face paling, then turned back to the safety of the crowd. The MC's voice crackled over the speakers. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the founder of the Clark Foundation, James Clark. James took the stage, the spotlight warm on his face. The crowd hushed, their eyes fixed on him. He adjusted the microphone, his presence commanding, every inch the man who'd built an empire from nothing. Good evening, he began, his voice clear and resonant. Thank you for joining me to celebrate the Clark Foundation. Many of you have asked why I'm doing this now, at this stage of my life. The answer is simple: legacy. He paused, his gaze sweeping the room, lingering briefly on Laura, Emily, and Nathan. For years, I thought legacy meant providing for those closest to me, ensuring their comfort, their security. I was wrong. A murmur rippled through the crowd. True legacy isn't about handing out wealth to those who expect it. It's about creating opportunity for those who will fight for it, who value hard work, loyalty, and integrity. The words landed like stones. Laura's hand tightened around her glass. Emily's eyes dropped to the floor, and Nathan shifted uncomfortably. James continued, his tone steady but laced with intent. Recent months have taught me hard lessons about trust, about who stands by you when it matters. Those lessons hurt, but they clarified what's worth building and what's worth letting go. He raised his glass. To new beginnings, to second chances, and to a legacy that endures not because of obligation, but because of shared values. The crowd erupted in applause, but James saw the fallout in real time. Guests glanced at Laura, their whispers sharp. Emily tugged Dan's arm, her face flushed with shame. Nathan downed his drink, his jaw tight. The message was clear. James wasn't just launching a charity. He was declaring independence from a family that had discarded him. Offstage, he was swarmed by well-wishers, business tycoons, philanthropists, even a senator, but his focus stayed on his family. Laura approached, her steps hesitant, her eyes pleading. "James," she said, voice low, "we need to talk." "Do we?" he replied, his tone neutral but cutting. "Seems you've been talking plenty without me." Her lips parted, but no words came. Before she could try again, Emily joined them, her eyes red-rimmed. "Dad, please. This isn't fair. We didn't mean to hurt you." James raised an eyebrow. "Didn't mean to? You let your mother convince you to cut me out of your wedding, Emily. You let her bring her friend, while I was told to stay away. That's not an accident. That's a choice." "It wasn't like that," Emily protested, but her voice wavered. "Mom said it'd be easier." "Easier for who?" James cut in, his voice low but fierce. "For you? For her? For Michael Reed?" Laura flinched. "James, keep your voice down." "Why?" he said, a bitter smile tugging at his lips. "Afraid people will hear the truth?" "They already know, Laura." You made sure of that when you paraded your affair at our daughter's wedding. Nathan appeared, his face a mix of anger and guilt. Dad, lay off. You're making a scene. James turned to his son, his gaze icy. A scene? Like the one you avoided by keeping your mouth shut about your mother's lover? You knew, Nathan. And you said nothing. Nathan's defiance crumbled, his shoulders slumping. I didn't want to get in the middle. You chose a side, James said simply. And it wasn't mine. He stepped back, addressing all three. You made your choices. Now I'm making mine. The foundation, the divorce, the trust, it's all done. You wanted a life without me? You've got it. Laura's voice broke. James, please. We can fix this. For the kids, for us. There is no us, he said, his tone final. And the kids made their bed when they backed you. Enjoy the gala. It's the last one you'll be invited to. He turned away, rejoining the crowd, their applause still echoing in his ears. The night wore on, the foundation raising millions, but for James, the victory was bittersweet. He'd struck hard, exposed their betrayal without raising a fist, but the cost was a family he'd once lived for. As he stood on the ballroom's balcony, the city lights sprawling below, he wondered if justice was worth the emptiness it left behind. Laura, Emily, and Nathan left before the final toast, their absence noted by the whispering guests. James raised his glass alone, the weight of his actions settling in. He'd won this round, but the war wasn't over. They'd feel the consequences, Laura's fall from grace, Emily's unraveling marriage, Nathan's financial ruin. And James? He'd keep moving, building a life where loyalty wasn't a currency spent so cheaply. The Miami skyline sparkled against the twilight, a mosaic of glass and light stretching toward the ocean. James Clark stood on the terrace of his new penthouse, a sleek, modern space perched atop a brick hill high-rise. At 52, he'd traded Chicago's chill for Florida's warmth, leaving behind the sprawling North Shore estate and the ghost it held. 6 months had passed since the Clark Foundation Gala, where he'd unveiled his family's betrayal to the world, not with venom, but with the quiet power of truth. Now, as the sea breeze carried the scent of salt, he felt the weight of that night easing, replaced by something lighter. Possibility. The penthouse was alive with laughter and music, a housewarming party in full swing. Caterers wove through the crowd, offering trays of ceviche and mango mojitos. Guests, business associates, foundation board members, and a few new friends mingled under string lights, their voices blending with the jazz trio's soft melody. James had curated the list carefully, inviting those who valued him for his vision, not his wallet. Notably absent were Laura, Emily, and Nathan. Their absence wasn't punishment, it was clarity. They'd chosen their path, and James had chosen his. Inside, the open-plan living area gleamed with polished floors and minimalist decor. A single photo sat on the mantel, not the old family portrait, shattered in his Chicago study, but a shot of James with the Foundation's first scholarship recipients, their faces bright with ambition. It was a reminder of what he was building now, a legacy rooted in purpose, not obligation. He sipped a bourbon, scanning the crowd. Ellen Harper caught his eye, a 48-year-old volunteer coordinator for the Foundation, her auburn hair swept into a loose bun. She was laughing with a board member, her wit sharp but kind. Over the past months, Ellen had become a steady presence, organizing events, challenging James's ideas, sharing quiet coffees after long days. She didn't know the full story of his family's betrayal, but her intuition filled the gaps, offering support without pity. Tonight, in a teal dress that caught the light, she looked like someone who belonged in this new chapter. The party was a triumph, but James's thoughts drifted to the fallout of the gala. Laura's world had unraveled swiftly. The divorce, finalized 3 months ago, left her with a modest condo in Evanston and a stipend that barely covered her old lifestyle. Chicago's elite, quick to judge, had iced her out. Her charity boards replaced her with fresher faces. Photos of her with Michael Reed, now a confirmed affair, still circulated online, a stain she couldn't scrub. She tried calling James, leaving voicemails that mixed apologies with defiance, but he hadn't responded. Her choices had built her cage. Emily's marriage to Dan was fraying. Dan's parents, obsessed with wealth and status, had cooled toward her when they learned the Clark fortune wouldn't flow their way. Whispers of gold digger followed Emily at social events, her confidence eroding. She texted James last month, a tentative asterisk, "Can we talk?" Asterisk, but he'd replied with a polite asterisk, "Maybe later." Asterisk her betrayal, siding with Laura to exclude him from her wedding, cut too deep for quick forgiveness. Nathan's fall was starkest. Stripped of his trust fund, he'd sold his sports car and moved into a cramped studio, working as a barista to pay off credit card debt. James heard through a mutual friend that Nathan had called him heartless, but the irony wasn't lost on James. Nathan, who'd known about Laura's affair and said nothing, was learning what it meant to stand on his own. The doorbell chimed, pulling James from his thoughts. His assistant, Carla, who'd flown in from Chicago to help with the party, answered it. Her voice carried a note of tension. Mr. Clark? You have visitors. James stepped inside, his bourbon glass still in hand. There, in the entryway, stood Laura, Emily, and Nathan. They looked out of place against the penthouse's sleek backdrop, Laura in a simple black dress, her elegance faded. Emily, eyes downcast, clutching a purse. Nathan, jaw tight, hands shoved in his pockets. The room quieted, guests sensing the shift. Quite a place, Dad, Nathan said, his attempt at casual undercut by a nervous edge. James's expression stayed neutral. Thanks, though I don't recall sending invitations. Laura stepped forward, her voice low but firm. We need to talk, James. All of us. As a family. A family. James raised an eyebrow, the word sharp on his tongue. Funny. I thought we were strangers who shared a last name. Emily's eyes welled up. Please, Dad. Just hear us out. James considered sending them away, but curiosity, or maybe a flicker of old loyalty, stopped him. He nodded to Carla. Give us 10 minutes. Keep the guests on the terrace. Carla hesitated, then ushered the crowd outside, closing the glass doors. James gestured to the living area. Sit. Say what you came to say. They settled onto the leather sectional, Laura in the middle, Emily and Nathan flanking her like reluctant soldiers. The silence stretched, heavy with unspoken history. Laura broke it first, her hands clasped tightly. We've been thinking a lot about what happened. About the wedding. About everything. We were wrong, James. I was wrong. James leaned against the bar, his gaze steady. Wrong about what, exactly? The affair? Convincing Emily to cut me out? Or maybe lying to my face for months? Laura flinched, but pressed on. All of it. Michael was a mistake, a stupid, selfish mistake. I hurt you, and I'm sorry. And you. James turned to Emily, his voice softer but unyielding. What you're sorry for? Emily's voice cracked. For listening to Mom. For not standing up for you. I thought it'd be easier, but I was wrong. I miss you, Dad. Nathan shifted, staring at the floor. I should have said something about Mom and that guy. I didn't, and, yeah, I messed up. James let their words hang, studying their faces. Regret was there, raw and real, but he saw something else, calculation. They weren't here just for love. Laura's social fall, Emily's crumbling marriage, Nathan's financial strain. They needed him, or at least what he represented. He sipped his bourbon, letting the burn ground him. Why now? He asked, his tone deceptively calm. 6 months of silence, and you show up hours before my party. What's changed? Emily glanced at Laura, then admitted, we heard about your new life here. The foundation, your friends. We were scared you're moving on without us. I am, James said simply. You made it clear I wasn't needed. You chose your mother's lies, her lover's comfort, over me. You don't get to walk back in because it's inconvenient now. That's not fair, Nathan snapped, his old defiance flaring. We're trying to fix things. Fix what? James's voice rose, just enough to cut. You didn't break a vase, Nathan. You broke trust. You let me be erased from Emily's wedding, from our family, like I was nothing. And for what? To keep things easy. Laura's eyes glistened. James, please. We're still a family. We can try again. He shook his head, the finality settling in. You're not my family. Not anymore. Family doesn't betray like that. Family doesn't wait until they're desperate to care. Emily sobbed quietly, Nathan's face hardened, and Laura reached for words that wouldn't come. James set his glass down, the clink loud in the silence. You've got lives to live. Learn from this, or don't. But I'm done carrying you. He walked to the door, opening it. It's time to go. One by one, they stood. Laura paused, her hand grazing his arm. I never meant for it to end like this. James met her gaze, unflinching. Neither did I. They left, the door closing with a soft thud. James leaned against it, exhaling. Pain lingered, but so did peace. He'd drawn the line, and it felt right. Back on the terrace, the party roared back to life. Ellen found him, her smile warm. Everything okay? She asked, her eyes searching his. Better than okay, James said, surprising himself with the truth of it. He raised his glass to the ocean, the horizon endless. To new horizons. Ellen clinked her glass against his. to new horizons. As the jazz played on, James felt the past slip further away. Laura, Emily, and Nathan would face their consequences, lives reshaped by their choices. But James? He was free, surrounded by people who saw him, not his wealth. With Ellen's laughter beside him and the Foundation's work ahead, he knew this wasn't the end. It was the start of something better, something his.